Hey everyone, Chris, the old-ass retro gamer here. Today I'm going to go over a new system that I've added to my collection. It is also something I've wanted for a very, very long time. I actually did have one of these systems, I want to say in maybe 2001, 2002. I had the American version of it. I got it off of eBay, really, really cheap before these things were going for super amounts of money. I also had a very nice selection of games. A lot of them were cheap back then, not so much now, but I actually ended up selling it with everything else when I lost my job a few years back. I wanted to kick myself because when I did sell them, I did so for a lot less than they're worth. I really didn't do any research, I just needed to get rid of them, and I put them up for basically half of what they were worth, maybe less. When I started getting back into collecting, the first thing I did was look up the value of games for this system and the system itself to see they basically tripled over the past few years, and it kind of blew my mind. So I realized it was going to be quite a while before I was able to get my hands on one of these systems again. This year, I was going to receive a pretty hefty tax return, and I decided, just as I did last year, that I was going to set aside a nice chunk of it to make one big purchase, something I normally wouldn't be able to afford. Well, I said, you know what, now's the time, so I did. What I had originally set out to buy was a TurboGrafx-16, and I also was really interested in getting one of the Turbo CD attachments, but separately, those two things are really expensive, especially the Turbo CD, the American version, and to buy them separately would not have been very cost-friendly. I'd also known about a combination of the two called the TurboDuo. I hear GameSack talking about it a lot of other gaming channels that I watch talk about it a lot, and I'd also seen that the American versions of those go for super amounts of money as well. So I kind of realized I wasn't going to be able to get one of those either. I went looking for these things in stores near me, and aside from having some games at one local store that I go to a lot, no one around me has anything TurboGrafx related at all, which is kind of sad. So I ended up having to resort to the internet. So I went on eBay, and I lucked out. There was a seller who was selling the Japanese version of the TurboDuo. It had been modded so it could play American games, which was fantastic. It is exactly what I was looking for, because not only did I want to rebuy the games that I had previously that were the North American games, the system was huge in Japan, and there's a lot of games over there that we didn't get that are supposedly phenomenal, especially when it comes to shooters, which I love. I wanted to be able to play a lot of the Japanese games, so getting one that can play both US and Japanese games was a no-brainer for me. So I made the decision, I forked up the dough, and I purchased a Japanese TurboDuo that has been modded to play American games. There's a nice little switch right here on the back that was added that lets me switch between American and Japanese. All the capacitors inside have been swapped out for new ones, which is a common problem I read about when I was doing my research, that the capacitors used in the construction of the TurboDuos, both American and Japanese, were cheap and burned out extremely quickly, just like the Game Gear. So now I can play not only American HuCard games and CD games, I can also play all the Japanese CD and HuCard games, which is fantastic. So I wanted to spend some time talking about this system. There were some things I like and I don't like about the TurboGrafx. One is the fact that it has one controller port. What the fuck? Seriously? Do you think that gamers have no friends, NEC? In order to be able to play multiplayer games like the Bomberman game, I think that's available for this, and there's a few others, you have to buy what like a Turbo Tap, I think it's called, which is a adapter that plugs into the controller port here, and it gives 5 controller ports out on the other end. How many games have 5 players at the same time? I don't know. I would assume 4 would be the max, but NEC doesn't play by the rules, man. They keep it real. The other thing that really sucks is the fact that while I love the controller and the fact that it has built-in turbo capabilities, which is probably why it was called the TurboGrafx to begin with, the cable for the controller is really short, like maybe 3 feet, which is kind of bullshit, because the way my living room is set up, my TV is very far away from my couch. Believe me when I say, I basically had to sit on the floor in front of my television like I was a little kid, like I used to do when I was a child, to play this damn thing, which really pissed me off. So I immediately looked into extensions for the cables for the controllers. I found one. This thing gives me like 3 meters of length, which now is not an issue. So I got like another 9 feet of slack now, so that's awesome. Another thing that really cheeses me off about this damn thing is that I have a shelving unit that goes alongside my TV that I have all of my systems stacked on vertically. And this would fit in it just fine. If it wasn't for the fact that the AV out port is on the side of the damn machine. Now I have this sitting rather awkwardly on my entertainment center right in front of my TV, right where the power switch is, because I can't really put this anywhere else. One thing I think is really fantastic about this system is the fact that collecting for this is very, very easy because you don't have massive cartridges or giant jewel cases to deal with. The games all come in CD-sized jewel cases, which is fantastic, and the games themselves come on these little cards called Hue cards, which basically are the size of a credit card. Just like the Sega Master System, the early Sega Master System games before they phased that out too. The fact that this has a 16-bit game on it is pretty fantastic. I give NEC credit for going against the grain and not creating a gigantic cartridge like the rest of the damn systems that were out there. One of the things I did when I decided to start collecting for this system was that I was not going to go CIB. I was not going to go complete in box. Why? The games come in these, jewel cases, right? They come also in an external cardboard box, which basically is yay high over the CD case. It's just as thin. It's awkward to put on a shelf. And for me, I really wanted to play these games. And out of all the systems that I own, this is the only system I decided I would go against my CIB rule. I would just go for the jewel cases with the game in it as long as it has the instructions and the game and the little holder that holds the Hue card in place with the sleeve. I'm okay with that because these fit perfectly on my CD shelf right here, and that's good enough for me. I'm okay with not having the big awkward cardboard box. I had to make an exception at some point because you know what? I'm not made of money. This is as far as I was willing to go. So let's get into the games. I have a nice mix of North American, CD, and Japanese games, and one really special one that I will save for last. Let's get into it. So obviously the first game I have is Bonk's Adventure, NEC's official mascot, Bonk. When the TurboGrafx was eventually phased out because it wasn't very popular in the US, NEC licensed out Bonk to Nintendo, and there was a port of, I do believe, this game on the Nintendo, and then there was a game called Super Bonk on the Super Nintendo, which is absolutely bug nuts insane. If you've seen Game Grumps play it, damn, I want it. It's a side-scrolling platformer, really, really fun, really cool mechanics that's kind of the opposite of Mario. Instead of banging things with your head upwards to destroy blocks and all that, you do it downwards. I really, really like this game. Back in the day, I did have the sequel, Bonk's Revenge, which is just as fun. And there's also a Bonk 3, which is super expensive and rare for some reason. Crater Maze. It's Pac-Man meets Dig Dug. At first, I wasn't really impressed, but the longer I played it, I really grew to like it. And eventually, I was like on level like 50-something, and I'm like, God damn, I've been playing this for an hour and a half. What the fuck? It is addictive as all hell. Deep Blue. It's a shooter. It takes place underwater. Looks kind of like Darius. The graphics are really kind of crappy. The music is not good. The play control is all right. The upgrades for your weapons are basically you're this little like robot fish, and you're just shooting bigger fish. It's okay, but I got sick of it after about 15 minutes. And then I have this, which is another port of an arcade game, which I actually own the other port for it for my Nintendo, and I actually did a review of it on this channel. Dragon Spirit. I really love the NES Dragon Spirit. I think it's a lot of fun, and here this one was closer to the arcade game, so I wanted to give this a shot. It is different than the Nintendo one. It's a lot harder. Basically, the play mechanics are all exactly the same. It's just it's patterned more after the arcade than the Nintendo-fied version, But really highly recommended vertical scrolling shooter. Really fun. Keith Courage and Alpha Zones is the pack-in game that came with the TurboGrafx-16 in America. A lot of people give this game a lot of crap. They're like, it's garbage, it's shit, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. It's really, overly simple. The graphics are kind of meh. I don't care. When I first got the system, this was the first game I popped in because even back in the day when I had the TurboGrafx, I did not have this game. And I really wanted to try it. I've been looking forward to trying it for a long time. And the fact that it comes with a really cool comic book also is really kind of cool. I like that a lot. This is a side-scrolling action game. It's really fun. It does get repetitive, though. That's the only real drawback I see to it. But it is a lot of fun. I don't see why people give this game so much crap. I mean, it was a pack-in game. It could be worse. Really? Clacks? Out of all the versions of this game I've ever played, this is probably the closest to the arcade version. It has the voices, it has everything, it looks pretty decent. It's just a fun puzzle game. And just the fact that it's not Tetris is cool. One of the staples of the TurboGrafx library is the legendary Axe. Really cool side-scrolling action game where you play as like this caveman dude who's running around with an axe. Obviously, it's in the title. Beating the shit out of bears and bug people and all this other kind of craziness. Giant shrimp. Japan. Really, really fun game. I'm really looking for the sequel, which I hear is a lot better, which I've never played. This game I was on a search for probably a month. And every time I would try to get one off of eBay in an auction, it would get like sniped out from under me right at the very end, which really, really pisses me off. Finally, I put out a plead in some of these Facebook groups I'm in, and one dude came to my rescue and said, I have a copy of that I've been looking to get rid of, so if you want it, you can have it for like 35 bucks. And I was like, yes, 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 because that was even cheaper than I was bidding on for this damn thing. And all the versions I see of this online are always with the box, which I don't want. And that is Ninja Spirit. This was always my favorite game for this system when I owned it back in the day. And it is a really cool side-scrolling action game with ninjas. Because they make everything better. Fact. This game is super awesome. The system is known for shooters, so I really have been on the lookout for some of the better ones. One of the ones I found while doing research is called Psychosis. And it is a really cool shooter. I mean, it's a side-scrolling game like Gradius and all that. But the thing is whenever enemies pop up, they like rip through the fabric of reality to attack you. And whenever you get a power-up, it does the same thing. It is kind of nutty and crazy. It is really bizarre, but it is a lot of fun. The power-ups are awesome. There's another shooter called Sidearms. Really fun game. This is like one of the more common games out there. Everyone I know that has a TurboGrafx, basically this game is in their library because why not? Another shooter, Sinistron. I never heard of this game before. It is almost like a combination of R-Type and Gradius. Really fun game. The power-up system is really unique and cool. It is hard as balls, but it is super, super fun. And the graphics and the music are fantastic. And then lastly, Vigilante, which is another staple for the system. I do believe this is a sequel to Renegade by Taito, which is available on Nintendo. But it's a really cool side-scrolling beat-em-up. The sprites are big. You know, not like big, not like China Warrior big, which is another game I'm looking for. Sometimes the controls can get away from you. They can be kind of goofy. And the bosses, especially that one on the first level, what the hell? That guy just whoops my ass. But it is really, really fun. I really like it. Okay, now we'll move on to the CD games, which I've purchased. I don't have many because these are actually really, really expensive. Any game that's available for this thing in CD form usually is about double the price of a HuCard game. Not the best purchase I ever made. The Addams Family. It's a side-scrolling action game. Yeah, it's just not that great. Final Zone 2, which is a sequel to a game I actually owned for the Genesis by Renovation. While that game was like a giant mech game, this one is kind of like a shooter. Which is fine. I'm okay with it. The graphics are cool. There's like anime cutscenes. A lot of voice acting, which sucks so good. And it's fun. It's really cool. It does take a while to load these games, though, and this one is probably the worst offender so far. Valis 2. This series is available on the Genesis, although I think the one called Sid of Valis is actually Valis 2, just kind of cutesified. I have played 1 and 3. I did own them for the Genesis back before I had to sell everything, and I also had Super Valis 4 for the Super Nintendo back then. But this was the only game I'd never played. So this is the first one I looked for when I found it was available on the CD. They also have Valis 3, which is kind of cool, and I'm on the lookout for it. So I was really, really excited about this. And when I played it, it's not good. It is not good at all. The graphics are choppy and really badly animated, especially for something on CD, which you would think they'd get their shit together for that. The amount of memory you have available to you, why couldn't you at least animate something properly? The controls are terrible. The fighting is bad. I mean, like, it's a side-scrolling action game, so you just have a sword, and it's just... the hit detection is really crappy. The music is okay, but there's lots and lots of cinema cutscenes that are animated. It takes forever to load them, just like everything else for this system. Not a great purchase on my part. Lastly is probably the best game I have bought for this system so far. And I got it because Johnny Millennium from Happy Console Gamer did an entire video talking about it, and he sold me on it. And it was right before I saw that video, right before I made the decision to get my TurboDuo. So I said right off the bat, one of the first games I'm buying for that fucker is Ys Book 1 and 2. So I popped this in the day I got it, which I bought at that store that I go to downtown, and the guy behind the counter even said, "Good for you. You are going to love this game." And I do. It is an RPG that kind of reminds me a little bit of Legend of Zelda, maybe a little bit of Crystallis. Instead of having like real-time combat like in like a Final Fantasy type of game or a traditional Japanese RPG, you basically just run into the enemies, and if your weapon stats are better than theirs, you will beat the fuck out of them. You just keep running into them to kill them. And at first it's kind of awkward and strange because I don't know of any games that do it like that. But once you get used to it, it is a lot of fun. Going out and grinding for levels in this is a lot more fun than it would be like in a Final Fantasy, you know, traditional RPG. But great music. This game has fantastic CD music. The cutscenes are cool. The graphics are nice. I love RPGs, especially the retro ones. And out of all the retro ones I've played, this one is probably one of my favorite retro ones. I played it for a couple of weeks, and it's just fantastic. I love it. So now we'll get into the Japanese games. I don't have many. But there were specific ones I wanted to get because I'd either played them through emulators, knew of their existence, or knew that there were better versions of American games available in Japan. First off is Batman. I had played this on an emulator, and I really thought it was fun because it was different. It wasn't a beat-em-up like the Nintendo and the Genesis game. It wasn't a side-scrolling platformer like the Game Boy game. This is a puzzle game, and it is like Pac-Man. Think of that Crater Maze game that I've got before with Batman. And the first few levels, you're running around collecting random items on levels, and you're getting power-ups, which let you walk faster through the mazes. You can shoot more batarangs, you can shoot them further. And then, like, later on, you're in the museum, and you're like, cleaning up the paintings that the Joker has defaced, which is kind of odd. But the thing about this game is it is really, really fun because it is different, at least in my eyes. And I really enjoy it. The music is fantastic, especially the fact that the first level music from the Nintendo Batman is in here and it has been amped up. And it is really, really cool. I like this game a lot. Do yourself a favor and pick it up because it is strange. It's a love it or hate it type of game. I know plenty of people that I was talking to on Facebook about this game, asking if anybody had played it. And half the people said ew and half the people said yay. So there's that. Ninja Warriors. A lot of you know that there was a port of this to the Super Nintendo, which is completely different from the arcade. I've played the arcade version. They actually have it at this arcade that is not a block from my house. And I played it quite a bit, and this game is basically a straight-on port. It's not great. It's not awful. It's kind of slow and clunky, but it is fun. It is a side-scrolling action game / beat-em-up. Pretty fun, but if you're going to spend more than $30 for this, don't bother because it's not worth more than that. Once I found out that this was available for the TurboGrafx, I said, yes, I have to have that. I love the Nintendo version of this game. I love it. It's one of my all-time favorite games, but I knew that it had been changed a little bit. It had also been slowed to a crawl, which is one of my problems with it. When compared to other shooters, it is a very slowly paced one. And that is Life Force. In Japan, it's known as Salamander. This is more like the arcade version, where some of the power-ups better resemble Gradius, which is this is kind of like a side story of. The music is exactly the same, but amped up, just like in the Batman game, and it is a lot faster, which is awesome. Like I said, I love the Nintendo version, but this is so much better. So much better. I'm so glad I got this. And lastly is one that I really wanted to get when I found out that the American version of it was heavily censored, because there was like a cease and desist aimed at the company that made this game because of something in it, and it was gory, and it was violent, and there was religious imagery in it that they didn't like. So when it came to the US, they censored it heavily. I'm not down with that. So I decided to get the Japanese version instead. Splatterhouse. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up type of a game, and you're playing as this guy who's wearing this cursed mask. It's a cursed hockey mask. Obviously, the lawsuit was from Paramount Pictures that they were using a white hockey mask, like Jason Voorhees' hockey mask, as what the main character's wearing. So, in the American version, he's wearing a purple hockey mask. Purple. Red and blue. Together. Purple. Plus, there's lots of gore. Nowadays, it's nothing because a lot of it's green. But there's like religious imagery. One of the bosses you fight is a bunch of like heads floating around an upside-down cross. There's like an altar that has an upside-down cross on it. There's a lot of really crazy shit going on in here, but it is a lot of fun. If you want this game, this is the version to have. And then, like I said, that store that I go to that's almost downtown that is all about retro gaming, when I first got the TurboDuo, I went in there for probably 3 weeks straight. I went in there once a week for 3 weeks straight. And the guys behind the counter started, you know, talking to me every time I'd pick stuff up. And one of them was like, "You've been buying a lot of TurboGrafx games lately, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you have a Turbo CD?" I was like, "Well, it was when I was buying Addams Family from them." I said, "Well, I'm buying Addams Family, so yeah, I do. I have a TurboDuo." He goes, "There's a homebrew game that we were given a copy of. The guy that made it wants us to sell it, and we don't want to sell it because it's not good." And I said, "Oh, really?" And he goes, "He's been calling us nonstop. You know, he wants us. He keeps on like asking. He's like basically harassing us when we're gonna buy 100 copies of it to sell in the store. And since they don't think the game is that good, and there isn't really that many people out there looking for turbo stuff apparently right now, that it wouldn't be worth the investment. So the disc that they got as a sample, he said, 'You want it?'" And I was like, "I'm not gonna turn down free stuff, especially for a system I just bought. More games I can get for it, the better. And having a homebrew game is kind of cool." So he gave it to me. I came home. I tried it out. It's called Hypernova Blast. It's by Mindwreck, which I've never heard of. Obviously, it's a homebrew company. Here's what the back says. "Emergency! The alien invaders have returned, and there's no end in sight. Can you protect yourself and the remaining capsuled cities before our civilization is forever lost? 200 levels, 5 distinct ships, and 1 to 5 cooperative players." Well, there's a use for that turbo tap. So basically, this game is a clone of Defender. I don't know if you can see it in here. It is basically a clone of Defender. For a game on a system that is 16-bit and on a CD, this is quite possibly one of the worst looking games I've ever seen. The graphics are like Atari 7800 quality. They are horrible. The music is horrible. The controls are horrible. The gameplay is god-awful. It is one of the worst pieces of shit I have ever played, and I'm glad I got it for free. Because if I had actually said, "Oh my god, there's a homebrew game available for this thing. That is so cool. Let me buy that for $35. I would have thrown this thing on the fucking L-Tracks. I would have. One of the worst things I've ever played. It is unplayable. It is like unfinished. So now I understand why they wanted to get it out of the store. I'm cool with having this in the collection just as a conversation piece. When people come over, I can always say, "Hey, I got a homebrew TurboGrafx game. That's kind of cool, isn't it?" And when they ask if they can play it, I can say no, because you will unfriend me. So there's my TurboGrafx collection so far. I've got some pretty decent stuff. I am very, very pleased with the system. It is just as cool as I remember it being. Very underrated system from back in the day. If it had gotten the attention that it did in Japan, in the US, this thing could have been a game changer. It was the first system to ever utilize CDs for gaming, and they were just known for making really good quality games. That's it for this video. If you have any suggestions for games that you think I should buy, ones that I don't know about, and if you want to talk about any of the games that I do own in my collection, what do you think's awesome, what do you think is poop, let me know in the comments below. Please subscribe to the channel. The more subscribers, the better, baby. Share the video with your friends on the Facebooks and the Twitters and the Googles and all that other stuff. And by all means, give the video a thumbs up if you like what you see. That way I know I'm doing something right and you're enjoying it. Also, don't forget to check out my show, Toasty. Address right there. No, I'm not making boobies with my shirt. Get your mind out of the gutter, you whore. We talk about everything geek, me and my friend Josh. Super fun show, great guests, lots of field trip episodes. Check it out. You won't be disappointed. Subscribe to that channel. And until next time, I'm Chris, the old-ass retro gamer, signing off.